It's time to hand out some awards for this season, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2024 Benchy Awards. These awards will consist of my takes on the standard NFL awards, MVP, Rookie of the Year, all that good stuff, combined with some extra awards that I've added in myself. But let's get it started, and shout out to the Black Eyed Peas because we're getting started hot with your 2024 NFL MVP. The Benchy for 2024 Most Valuable Player goes to Josh Allen. Why Allen over Lamar Jackson? Well, if you know me, you know it has nothing to do with the Bills having a better record than the Ravens. Because I hate when team records are factored into MVP conversations. Quarterbacks don't play defense, and they do not have all-encompassing power over where their team finishes in the standings. And we need to stop pretending they do. For me, this comes down to supporting cast more than anything. Now, that's not meant to discredit Lamar. It's meant to give props to Josh Allen, who ran step for step with Lamar all year, despite not having a receiver anywhere close to the caliber of Zay Flowers, or a tight end the caliber of Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid is mid, or a running back the caliber of Derrick Henry, even though James Cook is no slouch. Remember, Allen and the Bills came into the season with legitimate concerns over how they would look after losing Stephon Diggs. And not only did Allen not miss a beat, he had arguably the best season of his career. So even though his numbers are a teensy-weensy bit behind Lamar's, and remember, Allen didn't play Week 18, the difference in their supporting cast is enough for me to give him the edge. So that's most valuable player. But what about least valuable player? That's right, I'm adding an award to recognize the absolute worst player in the NFL this season. Now, we could give this to a corner that gets burned constantly or a turnstile offensive lineman, but since MVP leans so heavily toward quarterback, we're gonna have LVP do the same. And I feel bad because this guy's probably a good dude, but the Benchy for LVP of the 2024 season goes to a guy who just has no business playing quarterback in the National Football League, and that's Dorian Thompson-Robinson. DTR only started 2 games this year, but appeared in a few others while the Browns went back and forth at the position like the world's saddest pendulum. And in his combined action, Thompson-Robinson accumulated the second worst completion percentage in the league ahead of only Anthony Richardson. Yikes. The worst touchdown to interception ratio, the worst passer rating, the worst QBR, it was all bad. I really wanted to give this award to his fellow Browns quarterback whose injury opened up the opportunity for DTR to even see the field, but even Deshaun Watson's pitiful numbers were better than DTR's. That guy still sucks though, and because of that, we are introducing the Deshaun Watson Worst Man of the Year award. Every year, the NFL hands out the Walter Payton Man of the Year award to honor a player's commitment to philanthropy and community impact, basically just acknowledging players who are truly good people in addition to being great on the field. And while I don't feel qualified to make my pick for that award, I'm happy to present the counter to it, the Deshaun Watson Worst Man of the Year award, and it goes to Deshaun Watson. That guy. Offensive Player of the Year, we are going with Saquon Barkley, which is well deserved, but NFL, please, I am begging you, rename this award or redefine it or something so we can all be on the same page, because I'm willing to play your game. I know this just goes to the best non-quarterback offensive player, but it's very confusing, because technically if the most valuable player is an offensive player, how are they not also the Offensive Player of the Year? And even though you usually give Offensive Player of the Year to a non-quarterback, sometimes you give it to a quarterback, and sometimes it's not even the quarterback who won MVP. In 2011, Aaron Rodgers won MVP, but Drew Brees won Offensive Player of the Year. And in 2008, Peyton Manning won MVP while Drew Brees again won Offensive Player of the Year. What are we doing? Either way, the 2024 non-quarterback, but I guess sometimes can be a quarterback Offensive Player of the Year is Saquon Barkley. It's hard to argue with over 2,000 yards and one of the greatest seasons by a running back we've ever seen. Jamar Chase comes in as a close second after winning the receiving Triple Crown, which would normally be enough to take home the award, but not when Saquon has a season so special that it gives Eric Dickerson the night sweats. Defensive Player of the Year is an interesting one this year, because normally it just goes to the guy with the most sacks. But for the first time in a while, there's a guy in contention whose numbers don't tell the whole story, and I'm gonna give it to him. The Benchy for Defensive Player of the Year goes to Patrick Surtain. The reason numbers don't tell the whole story is the same reason it's always been for elite corners. He doesn't have the chance to rack up gaudy interception numbers because quarterbacks don't throw at him. Surtain has covered opposing teams' best receivers all year, and according to Next Gen Stats, has allowed a total of 33 catches for 279 yards. Let's take it a step further. The passer rating for opposing quarterbacks when targeting Surtain this season is 56. The worst passer rating for any regular starter in the NFL this year was Anthony Richardson, yikes again, at 61.6. That means targeting Surtain turns you into literally the worst passer in the NFL. I'm all for giving this award to the anchor of one of the best defenses in football. This next award is one that I truly believe should be an actual award in the NFL, and that is Big Boy of the Year. Now, I've heard from people that think there should be awards that recognize the best player at every position in the NFL. I kind of feel like all pro selections more or less accomplish that, but if there's one position that undoubtedly deserves more recognition in the form of an actual award, it's the offensive line. So I'm giving him one. The Benchy for Big Boy of the Year goes to Quinn Miners. This physical specimen had a pressure rate allowed of just 3.6% with no other guard in the league below 4. He had the second fewest QB pressures allowed out of any lineman in football, and he anchors the very best pass blocking O-line in the entire league with the Denver Broncos. This is another award that could have gone to a number of great players this season. Guys like Tristan Wirfs, Penei Sewell, and several others are arguably just as deserving. But hey, let's just be happy someone out there is finally giving the big guys some love. I see you, Quinn. But with that in mind, I am an equal opportunity award giver, so while I'm happy to give credit to the best offensive lineman in the league, we also have to acknowledge much the worst. That's why we're handing out the Right This Way, Sir award to the biggest pushover offensive lineman of the year. And for that, the Benchy goes to Alex Kappa of the Cincinnati Bengals. Kappa led all guards in the NFL with the most sacks, most pressures, and most hurries allowed in 2024. So while his teammate Jamar Chase won the Triple Crown, people have started referring to Kappa's trifecta of ineptitude as the Triple Clown. Or triple frown. Whatever you want to call it, it's bad. And it makes the fact that Joe Burrow is still the NFL's most productive passer in 2024 all the more impressive. If they get rid of Kappa, he might throw for 6,000 yards. Let's talk rookies now, shall we? The Benchy for Offensive Rookie of the Year goes to Brock Bowers. Jaden Daniels is probably going to win the real one, and I'm very much okay with that, but these are my awards, and at some point I'm going to draw the line with the quarterback supremacy. Daniels had an incredible season, but Bowers broke multiple records en route to the greatest rookie season by a tight end in NFL history. He broke Mike Ditka's 63-year-old record for most receiving yards by a rookie tight end with 1,194, and he broke Puka Nakua's record for most receptions by a rookie with 112 catches on the season, all while catching passes from Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Daniels will absolutely be a deserving winner with how quickly he turned around a perennially embarrassing Commanders team, but give me Brock Bowers here for being the best rookie at his position literally ever. The Benchy for Defensive Rookie of the Year is gonna go to Jared Verse. This award is a weird one this year because we didn't see a single defensive player drafted in the NFL draft until pick 15, so there weren't really any projected frontrunners or instant game record type guys, but Verse has helped fill the Aaron Donald-sized hole in the Rams defense. And let me tell you, that hole is massive. You know what else is massive? Anyway, he's PFF's 9th highest graded pass rusher this season, and he's one of the only players, let alone rookies, to be top 15 in both pass rush win rate and run stop win rate for edge rushers according to ESPN. The Rams knew they had to retool their defense to have a shot at another championship. And naturally, if they're pursuing a ring, of course they went to Jared. Before we continue, I once again have to give a shout out to MyBookie for sponsoring this video and this channel. If you guys are into sports betting or are looking to get into it, as always, do it responsibly. But if you need a platform to do it on, MyBookie is the place to be. Trying them out is one way you can support me and this channel, and there's plenty in it for you too, because if you use code BenchwarmerBran's when you sign up, you'll get your first deposit matched up to $1,000. Now, I'm making sure I don't miss out on this first round playoff action with the games kicking off this weekend, so here's what I'm cooking on. I'm taking the Chargers -3 at Houston. I know CJ Stroud said he likes being the underdog and that this is just like last year when they played the Browns, but unlike last year, the Texans are limping into the playoffs. I think the Chargers take care of business in their first playoff game under Jim Harbaugh. In the Ravens-Steelers game, I'm taking Derrick Henry over 98.5 rushing yards. He had 3 straight games of at least 138 rushing yards to close out the regular season, including 162 against the Steelers on December 21st. He only gets more dangerous as the year goes on, and you know he's going to be juiced up for his first playoff game as a Raven. And lastly, I'm sorry Vikings fans, I'm going with Rams money line. I feel like every time I buy in and convince myself this Sam Darnold run is real, he comes crashing back down to earth like he did against Detroit. And maybe it's a bad idea to bet on it happening 2 games in a row, but this is Sam Darnold's first ever playoff game against a veteran Rams team that has been here before. Stafford's not going to get rattled on this stage. I don't know if I could say the same about Darnold, but don't miss out on this first round playoff action. Check out MyBookie and remember, use code BenchwarmerBran's when you sign up. All right, back to the awards. My comeback player of the year is J.K. Dobbins. If you look at some of the odds on the internet right now, they've got Joe Burrow as the favorite with Sam Darnold right behind him, which I don't really understand. I know Burrow dealt with a wrist injury last year, but I don't think anyone's really surprised that he got back to form. And Darnold, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because didn't this award just get redefined to be specifically for players coming back from injury? Whatever. I'm gonna follow the rules and do it happily because my man J.K. deserves this award more than anyone I've ever seen. This dude dealt with lower body injuries to the point where I'm shocked his legs even work, let alone that he was a genuinely productive rusher for the Chargers this season. In 2021, he shredded everything, torn ACL, LCL, meniscus, and hamstring all at once. In 2022, he returned and then had another surgery to help with his recovery, but that still cost him 6 more games. And then in 2023, when he was finally supposed to be full strength again, he tore his Achilles in week 1. Forget the physical toll all of that must take, I can't imagine the mental toll. For Dobbins to come back and put up over 1,000 total yards and be the focal point of this Chargers rushing attack is straight up psychotic. He wins this award for sure. Now, since Comeback Player of the Year is supposed to exclude situations like Sam Darnold's, I still think there should be an award that applies to situations like his. So we're creating a Most Improved award. And quite honestly, I'm baffled that this doesn't already exist in the NFL. With that said, the Benchy for Most Improved goes to Sam Darnold. Obviously. I, along with most NFL fans, had completely written off Sam Darnold. He flamed out with the Jets and flamed out with the Panthers, but it turns out that had a lot to do with the fact that it was just the Jets and the Panthers. Darnold is proving that in the right situation, he can produce with the best of them. Some other guys I want to acknowledge in this category, though, are Jonnu Smith, who just had the best season of his career and showed everyone that Arthur Smith's obsession with using him over Kyle Pitts was apparently justified, and Zach Bond, a 3rd-round pick who floundered with the Saints for 4 years before signing a 1-year deal with the Eagles and immediately becoming an all-pro level linebacker and one of the NFL's leading tacklers. Guy's a problem. In a similar vein as most most improved, next up is the Ain't Right Back Award. Of course, inspired by Geno Smith, this award goes to a player who it seemed like people were actively writing career obituaries for until that player said, not so fast. Now this award absolutely also applies to Sam Darnold, so how does it differ from most improved? Well, some years most improved might be won by a player who wasn't necessarily written off. They just didn't have super high expectations to begin with, like a Zach Bond or a Jonnu Smith. So if that were to happen, I wanted to make sure there was also an award specifically for guys who got relentlessly crapped on by fans and media before making them eat their words. And again, I could give this to Sam Darnold, but I'm gonna give it to someone who I think was written off even more harshly than Darnold, at least over the last year or so. The Benchy for Ain't Right Back goes to Bryce Young. The Panthers got clowned on for the entirety of the 2023 season because CJ Stroud was lighting the league on fire while Bryce Young looked in over his head. And then to start 2024, there was seemingly no improvement. Bryce got benched, and it looked like that might be it. All those assets the Panthers traded to get the #1 overall pick were for nothing. Bryce was going to be a career backup, probably get traded for peanuts, and go down as one of the biggest busts in NFL history. Until Andy Dalton crashed his car, Bryce got the starting job back and turned into baby Drew Brees. I don't know what sparked this turnaround, but in the matter of a few weeks, Bryce changed his career trajectory from NFL washout right back to franchise quarterback for years to come. It's as impressive and confusing of a turnaround as I've ever seen, but I'm glad to see it. Continuing the theme of players who were unexpectedly productive, we've got the Bugatti in the Trailer Park Award, given to the player who performed the best despite an absolutely booty supporting cast. My Offensive Player of the Year pick, Brock Bowers, is definitely deserving of this award as well, but I'm going to give it to his fellow rookie, Brian Thomas Jr. BTJ finished third in the league in receiving yards despite playing on an extremely dysfunctional Jags offense, and actually somehow did most of his damage with Mac Jones at the helm. Go figure. Thomas seemed like the only player immune to the general ick that Jacksonville had floating around their organization this year, as Travis Etienne tanked, Trevor Lawrence underperformed, and Doug Peterson basically begged to be fired all year before finally getting put out of his misery at the end of the season. Hopefully the Jags can get Thomas some help in 2025, because if he has to carry this Dookie team for another 17 games, he might need back surgery by the end of it. The Cliff Award is up next, and it's basically the opposite of the Comeback Player of the Year award, because it's for players that in theory would have been in contention for that, but instead of bouncing back, they just fell completely off the cliff, never to return. And to the surprise of no one, the Benchy goes to Kirk Cousins. The Falcons signed Cousins despite him tearing his Achilles the year prior in hopes that he would finally solve their quarterback problem. And for a while, it seemed like maybe he would. He was pretty mediocre to start the season, but that was, understandably, just chalked up to rust after the injury. And then he exploded against the Buccaneers. And we thought, okay, I guess Kirk's back and Atlanta has their guy. In hindsight, he was just really good at torching the Buccaneers, because he did that again a couple weeks later, and other than that, he was mostly terrible. And before we knew it, he was benched for Michael Penix Jr. We'll see if he can bounce back next year with a different team, but as a soon-to-be 37-year-old quarterback who still has a surgically repaired Achilles, the odds aren't exactly in his favor. Next up, we have the Kyle Pitts Award for Most Disappointing Player of the Season. This award is for a player who had a considerable amount of hype entering the season and just did not even come close to living up to it. I could probably just give this to Kyle Pitts every year, but that's too easy. So instead, I'm gonna give it to Marvin Harrison Jr. Expectations for Harrison were sky high coming out of Ohio State, because on top of having a generational pedigree, he also seemed to be entering one of the best situations a rookie wide receiver could find themselves in. Most of the time, highly drafted rookie pass catchers end up on teams with horrible quarterbacks. After all, that's usually why those teams have such a high draft pick to begin with. But Marv was going to be playing with Kyler Murray, who may not be elite, but is miles better than the type of quarterback you usually find on teams picking inside the top 5. And yet, it didn't matter. Marvin might as well have had me or you as his quarterback, because he was mid in his rookie season. Now, it wasn't completely horrible. With 62 catches for 885 yards and 8 touchdowns, it really could have been worse, but he still fell well short of expectations. And what made it feel even worse was just how many other rookie pass catchers outperformed him, even though he was the first one drafted. Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Brian Thomas Jr., and even Ladd McConkey all had far better rookie campaigns. Don't get me wrong, I'm not writing Marvin off whatsoever. I think he'll be just fine. But when it comes to the 2024 season, the Kyle Pitts Award is all his. Alright, we've got one more real NFL award that we haven't covered yet, and that is Coach of the Year. Now, for someone that hates narrative-based awards, this one really rubs me the wrong way sometimes. Because how has Andy Reid not won Coach of the Year since 2002? How did Bill Belichick only win it 3 times in the 20-year dynasty of the Patriots? And how have coaches like Dan Campbell, Mike Tomlin, and Kyle Shanahan never won one? It's because it doesn't go to the best coach. It goes to the one that most exceeded expectations. Luckily though, this year there's a coach that I think more or less fits both criteria. The Benchy for Coach of the Year goes to Kevin O'Connell. I was ready to throw this Vikings team in the garbage after finding out Sam Darnold would be leading the way all season. So to get this out of them is insane. At 14-3, Kevin O'Connell is absolutely deserving of Coach of the Year. You had to know this was coming though. If we're giving out a Coach of the Year award, you could be damn sure we're giving out the Urban Meyer Worst Coach of the Year award. And the Benchy for that goes to Matt Eberflus. There were plenty of deserving candidates for this one, between Dennis Allen, Doug Peterson, basically anyone that just got fired, and then also Raheem Morris and Zach Taylor. But Matt Eberflus is the ultimate winner because he flamed out in truly spectacular fashion. That timeout flub on national TV on Thanksgiving Day was an all-time bad coaching moment that Bears fans will probably remember for the rest of their lives. It was the cherry on top of an utterly wasted season for a team that many believed was playoff caliber heading into the year. Don't worry, Chicago. The bad man's gone. All right, let's end on a light and fun note. The most memeable player of the year. And you gotta know who's winning this one too. The Benchy goes to Tennessee Titans quarterback Will Levis. I mentioned this in another video, but it's honestly wild that in a season where Jameis Winston got meaningful playing time, that he wasn't the most memeable quarterback. But that's what happens when week after week, Levis gives us some of the funniest plays, moments, and pictures of all time. On top of already having a background as the guy who put mayonnaise in his coffee and then did a brand deal because of it, where he released mayo-scented cologne. Levis really is one of a kind. That'll do it for this year's Benchy Awards. Thank you guys for joining me. Be sure to leave your award picks in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.